You know, it's funny how something as crucial as addiction support can feel like this big mystery, like where do you even begin? And trust me, I've been there.
Yeah.
But that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive your cheat sheet to addiction support groups. We're talking the big names, the hidden gems, the whole shebang.
I like it. A cheat sheet.
Right. Because who doesn't love a shortcut?
Nobody doesn't love a shortcut.
So let's talk about those big players first, those household names.
Oh.
12-step programs, they're practically legendary at this point. Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. You've heard of them, I've heard of them.
Oh, yeah.
But what's the deal with their approach? What makes them tick?
Well, it's all about that shared experience, that feeling of, hey, I'm not alone in this. And these programs, they really hammer home personal growth, but through this structured 12-step framework.
Okay, so structure's a big deal in the 12-step world.
Huge. It's practically woven into their DNA.
Like in those meetings.
Oh, yeah. Meetings are like clockwork. Around an hour, never more than 90 minutes, usually kicks off with a prayer.
A prayer.
Yeah, like a little snippet of the Serenity Prayer, to set the tone.
Huh, interesting. So structure's key. You know what else screams structure?
What's that?
Those AA chips.
Ah, yeah.
The ones that mark sobriety milestones?
Right.
Tell me more about those. They've always fascinated me.
Right. They're like little trophies, tangible proof of your progress. And each chip represents a different milestone.
Oh, wow.
And trust me, those milestones, they can be anything.
Okay.
24 hours sober,
Yeah.
a whole year, even decades. Wow. Oh, and get this. There are different colors and designs for different lengths of sobriety.
No way.
It's like a secret language within the AA community.
Wow, a whole secret language. See, I learn something new every deep dive.
Right.
But it's not just about the individual, right? Because addiction, it's like this ripple effect that touches everyone around them.
Totally.
And that's where I imagine groups like Al-Anon and Nar-Anon come in,
Exactly.
supporting the loved ones of those who are battling addiction.
Absolutely, because it's like you said, addiction doesn't just exist in a vacuum, right?
Right.
So Al-Anon, it's specifically for those connected to someone with alcohol addiction.
Okay.
While Nar-Anon is there for those affected by a loved one's drug use. And they offer this unique space, a haven really, for understanding, coping, and just like support tailored to their specific needs.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, loving someone struggling with addiction, it's its own kind of battle.
That's so true. And honestly, I feel like that's an aspect that just doesn't get enough attention. But the world of support groups, it's way bigger than just this 12-step model, right?
Yeah.
What else is out there?
Oh, you have no idea.
Right.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Ever heard of ACA?
ACA?
Adult Children of Alcoholics.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They've got this fascinating thing called the laundry list.
Yeah.
Basically, it's this list of common traits that, well, adults who grew up with addiction in their house often experience.
Okay, color me intrigued. I've seen like snippets of this laundry list floating around online, and I have to admit, even without a family history of addiction, some of those traits were surprisingly relatable.
Exactly. That's the thing about the laundry list. It gets at these long-lasting impacts of, well, early experiences, right?
Yeah.
It's like, even if you didn't experience addiction firsthand, those early patterns and behaviors, they leave their mark.
Totally.
And for those who did grow up with addiction, it's like looking in a mirror.
Yeah.
Finally understanding those deep-seated tendencies.
Yeah, it's like you're cracking a code you didn't even know you needed to break.
Right.
But let's talk about a group that takes a different approach. Entirely smart recovery.
Okay, yeah.
Our research tells us they're all about like empowering people with practical skills.
Interesting.
What's that all about?
It's fascinating, actually.
Yeah.
Smart recovery is all about equipping you with like a toolkit, right?
Okay, I like it.
Think coping skills for navigating urges and cravings, managing your thoughts and feelings around addiction, and basically just building a more balanced life.
So it's less about just say no and more about here's how to make informed choices.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm already sensing this deep dive is going to leave me wanting to learn even more. It's like we were saying earlier, that whole ripple effect. Addiction doesn't just impact the individual, right?
100%. It's like a stone thrown in a pond. Those ripples, they go out and out.
Exactly. And that's where I think these other groups, like Codependents Anonymous and Families Anonymous, they step in to offer support, right?
Yeah, they totally get it,
Yeah.
They acknowledge that the people closest to the person struggling, they need support and guidance too. It's not just about the individual's recovery.
It's about the whole ecosystem healing.
Exactly.
Which makes me think, what are the benefits of these support groups, for someone who might be on the fence? What actually makes them so effective?
Oh, there are tons. I mean, first off, you're learning serious coping skills, right? Like how to handle those triggers and cravings that can just throw you off course.
It's like having a roadmap through a minefield.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're finding the motivation to actually stay the course,
Yeah.
even when things get tough. Because let's face it, recovery is a marathon, not a sprint.
Oh, for sure. And having that support system, those people who get it, I bet that makes all the difference.
It's huge. It's like having a whole crew of people who've run the addiction marathon and are now cheering you on from the sidelines. But it even goes deeper than that.
Deeper.
Our research mentioned things like reduced depression, you know, improved mental health overall, people even reporting a greater sense of happiness.
Which makes total sense, right? Connection, support, those are like superpowers for anyone. But especially when you're battling something as tough as addiction.
No doubt.
Speaking of tough, our notes mention interventions, which honestly seem like a whole other beast altogether.
Yeah, interventions, those are tricky territory for sure.
So what's the deal with interventions? When are they even necessary?
Think of it as the last resort.
Okay.
Something you try when someone's addiction is so severe they can't even see it, or they're just like resisting help with every fiber of their being.
So if it gets to that point, how does an intervention even work? Paint me a picture.
Okay, so picture this.
Mm-hmm.
You gather the people closest to the person who's struggling. Family, close friends, maybe even a mentor or coworker. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The key is you're not there to judge or blame.
Yeah.
It's all about love and concern.
That sounds incredibly difficult to pull off, honestly, especially when emotions are running high.
You're telling me it takes meticulous planning and a whole lot of emotional prep. It's not about just showing up and yelling, "You've got a problem."
Right.
It's about coming together with this unified message about how the addiction is impacting everyone involved.
So everyone shares how the addiction is affecting them.
Yes. And then, this is the crucial part, you present really clear, concrete options for treatment and support.
So it's not just pointing out the problem, it's offering actual solutions.
Precisely. And support in taking those next steps.
Right, because it's one thing to say, hey, you have a problem, but it's another thing entirely to say, hey, we love you, we're worried sick, and we're here to help you get the help you need.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, you have to be ready for any reaction. Defensiveness, anger, even flat-out denial. It's all on the table.
Sounds like there's a real art to staging an effective intervention.
Yeah.
It's definitely not something to jump into without, careful consideration and professional guidance.
Wow. It's kind of like we just did a crash course in Intervention 101.
Right.
And, I'm realizing that finding the right support, whether for yourself or for a loved one, it takes a lot of, knowledge, but also takes a lot of heart.
It really does. And remember, what works for one person might not work for another.
Oh, yeah.
And that's okay.
It's about finding the right fit for you.
So for someone who's listening right now, and they're maybe feeling a little overwhelmed with all these options, how do they even begin to find that right support group?
Such a good question.
It feels like, where do you even start?
Right. So I always recommend starting with a trusted healthcare professional.
Okay.
They can be like your support group scouts, right?
Yeah.
They often have connections to reputable groups in your area, or at least resources that can help you kind of explore your different options.
Like a personalized roadmap to help you navigate the whole support group landscape.
Exactly.
I like it.
And never underestimate the power of a little online sleuthing.
Right.
A lot of support groups these days, they have websites
They do. They do.
with meeting times, locations, you name it. Some even have testimonials from members, which can be super helpful
Yeah.
to kind of get a feel for the vibe of the group.
Right, because it's kind of like trying on a new pair of shoes, right?
Exactly.
You don't have to commit to the first group you try.
Not at all.
Shop around a little bit.
Exactly. Find what fits. Because finding a support group, it's kind of like finding your tribe. You want a place where you feel comfortable, supported, understood. And sometimes that takes a little exploration.
That's so true.
The important thing is taking that first step.
This deep dive has been, incredible. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this whole world.
Right. There's so much out there.
But I already have such a new perspective.
Okay.
If our listener takes away just one thing from our conversation today, what would you want it to be?
I think the most important thing to remember is that seeking support, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.
Yeah.
Whether you're personally grappling with addiction or you're walking alongside a loved one who is, these groups, they offer this like beacon of connection and understanding and hope.
Mm-hmm.
Never underestimate the power of shared experience.
That is so beautifully said. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Our research really emphasized that the real magic in these groups, it happens when there's active participation.
Absolutely.
So what is it that might make someone hesitate to really engage, to let themselves be seen and heard? And even more importantly, how can we create environments where those barriers, those walls, they just crumble, allowing everyone to truly feel safe and supported and empowered to heal?
Now, those are some questions worth pondering.
They really are. And that is a wrap on another deep dive. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes, because trust me, we've got some juicy topics lined up.